So welcome this morning. My name is Cynthia Knapek, and I am the president of the Leadership Louisville Center. I'm really excited to have you all here this morning for our session, our microlearning session on the business case for belonging. I want to start out by telling you just a little bit about the Leadership Louisville Center. I know we have a lot of alumni on this virtual call, on this microlearning opportunity. So I want to welcome all our alumni back and say, hey, thank you for coming. We love to see you. We love it when we can continue on this learning journey together with folks that have been through other programs. So welcome back is my first shout out. For those of you that are new to the Leadership Louisville Center, here is a little bit about who we are, what we do, and what our purpose is. Our purpose is to inspire and equip leaders to be better and do better. Anyone who's ever created a purpose statement or been involved in drafting a mission statement knows that every word is painstakingly chosen with love. For us, and the words that are important in this are, first one is inspire. And that's really all about the things that we do to help people understand life in our community. What is going on in our community? What are the amazing assets that we have in our community? What are the things that we need changed, that we want to have a better community? And most importantly, we want to inspire you to raise your hand and be part of driving that change that you wish to see. The next thing that is significant in there is equip. We also run programs that are about your individual capacity to show up as a world-class leader. And so this is about those investments that we make in you to show up as the very best version of yourself. We want you to be better personally yourself so that you will go out into the community and do better. And I love our purpose. I am so committed to it because I think that's important for us to, one, realize our full potential as humans, and then also figure out how do we pay that forward? How do we make our surroundings better? How do we make the people around us better and the community that we live in better? So I'm particularly proud of my role at the Leadership Louisville Center. So excited to be our featured speaker for this particular installment of our microlearnings. Lisa Zangari and Zuri Johnson curate our microlearning series. They're very particular about who they allow to do a microlearning. I had to bribe them to let me on, so I promise, Lisa and Zuri, I won't let you down. I really am going to rise to the challenge, I hope. So thank you to Lisa and Zuri for all the work they're doing to put this together, and I'm excited to share with you what our all the information that we have around the business case for belonging. But before I do that, I am going to do you a huge favor. I know that after we finish today, you will be thinking, what else can I do with the Leadership Louisville Center? So in anticipation of your needs, a couple things I want to let you know that are coming up, opportunities for you to be better and do better. Our green room is something that I am especially proud of. Lisa Zangari curates our green room. For those of you that know Lisa or have done one of her programs, you know that Lisa is world-class in terms of her ability to create amazing content that is inspiring, that helps you show up as the very best version of yourself. But not only is Lisa fantastic at creating content, she's also an amazing talent scout. And Lisa does a really great job of making sure that the things that are on our green room calendar are really top notch. That's part of what we do when we curate this content for you, is we weed through all the stuff that was just meh, and we bring you the stuff that is really worth your time because we know how valuable everyone's time is. There's a few things that are coming up in our green room. One of the exciting things is we've flipped all of these. These are kind of our one-day jump in and sharpen the saw opportunities. Sometimes they're 2-day. We flipped all of this to virtual because that's what you all said you wanted. And you said you still wanted to sharpen the saw, but you wanted to be able to do it virtually from the comfort of your living room. So we did that. We've just flipped everything to virtual. I'm very excited about being able to provide that for you. We're also doing some in-house. So if you're thinking, man, my team could really use some opportunities to make sure that they are rising to the big challenges that we've got right now, you can talk to us about that too. I also want to give a shout out to Erin Miller on our team. We have amazing people who work for us, and Erin is one of them. Erin is the ringleader for our civic programs, and he has a wonderful way. He had a previous career in broadcasting, worked in radio, and he has a wonderful way of interviewing people so it brings out their authentic self. And if you want to meet some of our community's very distinguished leaders, some of the influencers who are driving change in this community, you can download our newly launched Leadership Louisville podcast. And see, Erin Miller's getting some love in the chat. I can see that love from Rebecca. So definitely check that out. Last thing I want to mention to you is our upcoming 100 Wise Women event. Our next keynote speaker is Mason Rummel. So here's the thing that I want to mention about this event that I love. We've been doing this for over a decade, and the reason that it continues to be so popular is, yes, one of the things that's important to Leadership Louisville is we like to curate good content, good speakers. So our speakers are always great, and we always learn something from them. But more specifically, this is different from any other event that you would usually attend, because we spend as much time curating your experience as we do thinking about our speakers. We spend a whole lot of time making sure that we're not just learning from the speaker, but we're learning from each other, because that whole sense of connection is kind of part of the ethos of the Leadership Louisville Center. That whole sense of how do we create spaces where you can bring your authentic self, where you can learn with your heart on your sleeve, is a part of who we are as an organization. So that's what makes this particular event special, is it creates that. So if you're missing that right now, that authentic connection, you're not going to want to miss the next Wise Women. And that also brings us to our topic for today. I mentioned that part of what we do is always centered around belonging and kind of creating those spaces where we belong and where we feel comfortable raising our hand to participate as our full self, which is why we're going to talk today about the business case for belonging. So Leadership Louisville Center is a 40-year-old organization, and for all 40 years of our existence, we have been studying social fabric, understanding what strengthens that fabric, understanding what tears at it, and it's been a real fascination for us. We do this in our civic programs and have for a long time worked on creating that sense of belonging. We try and multiply that out into the community and look for ways that we can create stronger social fabric. So what I will tell you is that this desire to talk about belonging is rooted in all of those years of history. But what has been interesting to us is that now it's not just about our community, but it's fascinating to think about our organizations and how that sense of belonging is important, how we can create it, how we destroy it. And that's what we're going to talk a little bit about today, is the business case for belonging. I think one of the things that I will share with you is that belonging is kind of it has become part of what we talk about when we talk about our ability to lean into diversity, to equity and inclusion. I'm not going to claim to be an expert on diversity, equity, and inclusion, but I will tell you that I am an expert student. I like learning. And so when we started seeing that belonging was becoming more and more part of people's lexicon, I wanted to dig in and do the learning. And I'm going to share with you a couple of the highlights, some things that I've found that I think might be useful for you all as you are in your own pursuit of the path to belonging, for you, for your organizations, for your teams. Okay, so belonging, a lot of people are like, oh, great, it's another buzzword. I was just getting used to diversity, equity, inclusion. I'm trying to figure out, racism and all of these words. Belonging is just one more word, right? It's another of the latest, greatest hits in buzzwords. No, It's not really. Belonging is something that we've studied forever. It is a part of recognized science. This is, for those of you that are having college flashbacks to textbooks, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Like most of us, we studied this. Yeah, anthropology classes and communication classes. It's recognized as part of standard science. This Maslow says, we got our basic needs, we got to meet those first: food, water, security, those things. That's what they were taught. And Maslow's hierarchy of needs is he published in the 1960s, I think, and is still in textbooks today. So belonging is not the latest buzzword. It's actually something we've been studying and learning for a long time. And if you prefer more contemporary social scientists, they even have looked at Maslow and said he didn't know what he was talking about. Belonging is actually at the base of the triangle. That need to affiliate, that need to connect, how we create tribes is the foundation. So regardless of whether you have a poster of Maslow in your room and you're a devotee, or whether you think Maslow is a simpleton and he didn't know what he was talking about, or whether you never took a college class about this and don't know, I'm going to venture a guess that even if you don't have that, even if you didn't study it, you know exactly what I'm talking about when I say what is a sense of belonging. We are all intimately familiar with what it is and what it isn't. Just to bring it up for you, to kind of get that memory going, I want you to just think about, when was the last time you were invited to a party? You got the invitation in the mail. Yay! Oh, it's so nice to be included, right? So there's that inclusion word. It's nice to be included. But if you've ever gotten that invitation to a party and you went, oh yeah, it's nice to be included, and then you went, I don't know if I want to go though. And you kind of had that moment of like, ugh. And that's usually our question of whether or not we belong at that event, whether or not we belong at that party. I don't know, maybe you got an invitation and you were like, I don't want to go, those people are kind of nerdy. But actually, even if you got that and that was your reaction, that was still probably something in you going, I don't know if I'm smart enough to hang out at that party, right? I don't know if I belong there. So that sense of belonging is connected to that opposite sense of, I know I don't necessarily belong. And what we're thinking is, when we wonder if we belong, it usually comes up, the word TOO comes up a lot, right? I think I'm too fill in the blank, and I know, okay, so like when I go to one of those parties where I don't know and I feel like, maybe I'm too, maybe I don't belong here, you can go into my closet after I've left for the party, and there's like 15 outfits on the floor, right? Because I put this one on, I was like, no, that's too fancy. I put this one on, I'm like, no, that one's too casual. I put another one on, I'm like, no, that looks like I bought it at the thrift store. And not like in the good way that Macklemore sang about in his song, like, so there's all this stuff that's on the floor because it was too this, it was too that, it was too that. When we feel a sense of belonging, we don't worry about being too anything. In fact, a lot of times when we feel that sense of belonging, the people that are there, they actually like us for the things that are too. They like us for being too opinionated. In fact, they're like, that's why you're my best friend, right? That's why I like you. Okay, so if that's the difference, if that's where we feel like, I know the difference between being invited to a party where I feel a sense of belonging versus being invited to a party where I'm glad to be included, but I'm still not sure I belong and I'm worried about it and I'm kind of nervous about it. So move that over into, have you ever been included in a meeting and you were excited to be included in the meeting, but as soon as you walked in, you kind of did that thing where you worried, like, well, where do I sit? And you could, like, my shoulders are drawing up, like I could feel the tension. And when I come to this meeting, am I supposed to express opinions, and are they the right opinions? Or am I just supposed to sit here and nod and smile and be grateful to be in the room? I don't know. I'm not sure. And there's that like anxiety, and I can even just feel the anxiety building as I'm talking about it. I'm not even invited to the meeting, but you get that. We've been to that meeting where, yep, I'm glad to be included, thank you, but now I feel the weight of being judged as I walk into that meeting. There is, so that feeling of being judged makes us on guard. It puts us on guard. It makes us cloak a piece of who we are, so we're not bringing our full authentic self into that meeting. Now the question is, if you multiply that out, if you say, yep, I know what it is, I remember what that is, the sense of belonging when I'm invited somewhere, and I've recognized the sense of maybe I don't belong, multiply that exponentially. If you had that feeling, feel nervous, anxiety, every day that you walked into work, if you had that feeling every day when you walked into work, there's a word for that. I didn't coin the phrase. It's the emotional tax. This slide is actually from a group called Catalyst. They're a really great organization. They have a lot of really robust research, which is why we use them. And I always like to share when I find good resources. This is part of what we do at Leadership Louisville, is when we find good, interesting resources, we like to share it with you and say, ooh, check this out. Catalyst has some really interesting research. And they have created this phrase that's connected to emotional tax. Emotional tax is the price we pay for being on guard every day, for cloaking a piece of who we are. It is the antithesis of the reward that we get when we fully feel like we belong. In this particular study, they were looking at not just the personal cost to the individual, but they also did some math on the cost to the organization. If your people constantly feel on guard, they are exponentially more likely to be considering leaving their job. So we can do an easy math on what that costs our organizations when people leave their job. This is, connected to this idea of like, well, I spent all this time and energy to hire diverse people, and I got them here and they left. This is largely the reason why. It is because of this emotional tax that's the constant payment every day. In this particular study, they said 58%, this was a study that was all people of color. So in this study of all people of color, 58% said that they feel regularly on guard. They feel regularly that they are cloaking a piece of who they are, that they do not intrinsically, innately belong to the culture that they're working in. Black men in particular expressed sense of being on guard. And the question that I have that I pose that I'll get you again. I love the chat box for those of you that weren't here earlier. I'm reading your chats. I'm getting my energy. So let me ask you this question. If you were not expending that energy, that emotional tax in guarding who you are, where else could you expend that energy? What other positive places might you be able to jump in and do more for your organization if you didn't have that feeling, that I need to be on guard feeling? So creativity and innovation, yes, bingo. Score one for Teresa. Providing more programming, building relationships, business development, sure. Bringing more people, yeah. Innovation gets another shout out. Yeah, advocating for others, I love that one, that's a good one. Yeah, absolutely. So there's two areas where I will suggest to you that get maximum benefit. Obviously, there's this one, the Catalyst study is focused on one benefit to your organization being all about employee engagement and retention. So the other two that are huge are innovation. Absolutely. Innovation doesn't happen unless we are creating cultures of belonging where people are being able to bring their full authentic self. This is where we lean in. When we lean into diversity and we actually embrace it as an asset, we get the reward. The other one is, we talk about the speed of trust. When we create atmospheres where people trust each other, we get things done exponentially faster. We can bring our new products to market faster. We can get things done faster. So these are other areas where if we shift our thinking to be intentional about belonging and understanding, are we asking people to pay this emotional task, then we absolutely can reap some really amazing benefits. Here is the next thing though. There is always a cost to belonging. So yes, emotional tax is one of those costs. The question that I pose for you all, and the question that I want us to think about today, is there's a light and a dark side to pursuing belonging in an organization. One of those perceived costs is compliance, silence. A lot of times when we think, I want to belong to this organization, what we acknowledge, or rather what we accept is, so in order for me to belong to this organization, this is a go along to get along kind of experience. So we accept the idea of compliance and silence as our price to belong to this organization. And like I said, there is a cost to belong. There's always anything worth having in life, there is a cost. I would say so at Leadership Louisville Center, right? There is a cost to be a member of the Leadership Louisville Center. As president of Leadership Louisville Center, I will tell you that I think it is a worthy cost. But there's a cost. So the question is it a worthy cost? The question is the juice worth the squeeze, right? Is it worth it? What I'm putting into belonging to this organization, is it actually worth it? And my suggestion is there is a cost that is worth it. In organizations who are intentional about creating a culture of belonging, one aspect of that is creating a culture of authenticity and vulnerability, where that is a leaned in, embraced part of who we are as a culture. This is the piece of it that when we lean into authenticity and vulnerability, this is how we get to the innovation. This is how we get to changing the speed at which we can get things done. So all of those things, or those are the two buckets that I see most frequently in terms of there is a cost to belonging to this tribe. There is a cost to belonging to this organization. Sometimes we accept the cost that compliance and silence and kind of go along to get along is the cost of belonging. The other option is that we can say we don't accept that as the cost for belonging, and we actually want to create a stronger, richer sense of authentic belonging by being intentional about how we surround ourselves with rewarding authenticity and vulnerability in our organization. I love storytelling as part of our learning, and I don't, like I said at the beginning, I would not call myself an expert. There are a lot of people in this room that I think are absolutely have some really great learnings to share. And while I would love to open this up to everyone and say, let's all just share, in order to really get some good stuff, what I'd like to do is I'd like to offer you the opportunity to learn from each other. And I want you to be my color commentary, my color analyst. We're a sports family, right? We watch ESPN, so that was sports reference that I really don't know anything about. But be the person who adds life and color to this idea of the perceived cost of belonging in your organizations. And let's do some storytelling and sharing with each other. I think that the pursuit of authenticity and vulnerability is our path forward. Largely, I think that because authenticity and vulnerability are the paths that help us get below the iceberg. If we look at particularly issues of inclusion, there's all the things that happen up above the surface of the iceberg. But pursuing more authenticity, cultures of vulnerability where that's rewarded and not punished, if you will, are how we get past that tip of the iceberg. Again, they're how we lean into embracing diversity as an asset and actually getting to that point where all the diverse opinions feel comfortable bringing their full and vulnerable self. That's where we get those good products, the good work products. That's where we get that that actual sense of belonging. That is the sense of, I got the invitation, and I don't actually care what I'm wearing to the party. They like me for who I am, and I'm excited to be there because I do feel that sense of belonging. So hopefully you all kind of proved my point, and I could just say, okay, we're done here. Belonging is a good thing, but I did say that I was going to talk about building the business case for belonging, and that's what I'm going to do. This is just some more interesting data that we found that we kind of like to share with you all, because I think storytelling is one thing. It's amazing. It kind of gives us it brings the story to life for us. So thanks to all of you that share a short story in your breakout room. But the data is also good too. This is a very recent study that was done. It just came out in June. And this particular organization represents like 90 different companies who employ 6 million different people in 100 and some odd countries. They're a fairly robust research organization. They're frequently quoted in Harvard Business Review. And in this recent study, they were looking at the power of belonging. And I want to share this with you because the numbers are not, like when we talk about numbers that are statistically significant, you're looking at like, oh, there was a 10% increase, 12%, right? I want you to look at these numbers for a minute in this fairly robust study from this fairly revered organization. So the difference here is, shrink that second. In professionals who feel that sense of belonging, they are more engaged at work, 97% versus 54%. They're very loyal to their organization. Look at the gap in that one, 93% versus 35%. They intend to stay at least 2 years. They would recommend their company as a good place to work, 71% versus 17%. Those are not just statistically significant. I think those are the numbers that we bring back to our management teams and say, wow, we have an opportunity to make a significant difference in the culture of our organization if we spend some more time and intentionality centered around whether or not our people would put themselves, would they check that box that says, yes, I am in the higher quartile of belonging. So I think that is worth kind of making a case for. This particular study is also kind of interesting here. You can put this into the chat box if you know the answers to these questions. Who do you think of all, so this was that last study was done of people of color. This is very broad. So this is, you know, men, women, Black, white, Asian, Latinx, all of the colors in the Crayola box. Which group of people do you think felt the highest sense of belonging? Who rated themselves as having the highest sense of belonging? Do you think? Whoops. Yeah, let's see. Let's see who gets it right. Yay. Oh, yes, you all are so smart. You're geniuses. White men, right? Duh. Yeah, okay. They also said that, and they kind of carved up this data, C-level executives also feel a greater sense of belonging, also not surprising. Interestingly, extroverts feel a much greater sense of belonging than introverts. I also think this is very interesting and very relevant to some of the slides that are coming next. So, but ultimately, these numbers are really big. And they're all centered around people's feelings of belonging to your organization. Worthy pursuit of any organization's time and energy to start thinking about, do we have some intentionality around this? Are we mapping this out? So now you're intrigued and you're going, yes, okay, I think we should be paying attention to this as our organization. But I don't really know what, like, that's a kind of a warm, fuzzy word, right? What exactly is belonging? Like, we don't have an index that measures that. How would I even know if I'm supposed to put myself in the highest quartile of belonging or the lowest quartile? What is it? How do we measure it? How do we know if our organization is doing it right? So same organization also kind of mapped it out. They mapped it out as an index. And I really like this. And I think you could pull this and say, okay, let's use this as some framework for us. You can look at the index that they created, but I would actually suggest if you want this to be part of your culture, then use these as some prompts, but create your own index for belonging within your organization. What does it mean to you? The things that they noted were significant assets or attributes of a sense of belonging. Were, do you feel seen at work? Are you, rewarded? Are you respected? Do you feel supported? Do you have what you need to be successful? Are you connected to the other people at work? I heard one person kind of describe the sense of belonging as, when things go wrong, do I feel like there are people there who have my back and want to turn this into a success? It's just kind of as simple as you can make it, is, do you have that feeling? It's one of the things that I love about our team at Leadership Louisville Center, is I do feel like all the time, when we screw it up, our teammates have our back. They're making sure that we manage through it together. The last one I thought was interesting too. The other three things are things that we have been working on at the Leadership Louisville Center that we've kind of incorporated in some of the work that we do. But the last one I think is interesting as well, which is pride. When you're proud of your organization, like we all remember, we know what it is to, to wear the logo, to wear the letters. We're like, yay, my sorority, yay, my people, my tribe. So, our people in your organization, when they get the company gift and it's the logo wear, are they like, yay, awesome, I can't wait to wear it? Or are they like, yay, great, I'm gonna stick that in a drawer somewhere? When they get the coffee mug, are they proudly displaying the logo? Are they proud to be part of your organization? I thought that was a really good one for organizations to pay attention to, right? And so I think kind of worth noting. And I just liked this. I thought it was, again, if we're thinking, yes, I do think we need some intentionality around belonging, where do we start? And I think this is a good place to start. Actually, if you work for a company that you're proud of, you give them a shout out in the chat. If you're like, yay, go team, I'm totally proud of my team, we can give them a shout, and we'll give them a little love for doing it right. For they must be working on some aspects of how do we create a culture of belonging. Okay, so great, you can create an index, that gives us something to measure, right? But what if I want to do something that is more action oriented? I don't want to just measure it. I want to start doing something in my organization that will make a difference in people's sense of belonging. Or if you're on your individual pursuit, you're thinking, but I want to do something that puts me on that path to feeling like belonging. What is the thing that I can do that helps move the needle for me and my sense of belonging and connection? So we have a recommendation, we have a suggestion, something that we think does make a difference. If authenticity and vulnerability are the right price to pay, if that makes the juice worth the squeeze, then how do we add to people's bank account to be able to pay that price? What is the thing that we could do that makes it so that they themselves can jump into this and contribute to their own sense of belonging? Our suggestion is this, is that we emphasize and work on the ability to help people find their voice. Or if you're on your individual path, then our encouragement is to spend some time trying to figure out how you can find your voice. Again, this goes back to that whole well, how do we tap into diversity as a strength? When we create this, when we lean into this whole idea of helping people find their voice, it's the opposite of a compliance culture. If we personally are leaning into the idea of I want to find my voice, that it is the opposite of just simple compliance. Yeah, we got a lot of love. We got GE and ARGY, Girl Scouts, a lot of people doing it right. So pay attention to the chat if you're thinking, I need a model, an exemplar of who's doing it right. Okay, so finding your voice, we think is one of the critical things. Why? Why would it be the one thing? If we were going to boil this down and suggest to you, here's one action that could make a difference. This is the action. The reason is because of this. Everyone's seen these, different analogies, and kind of it gives framework to diversity and inclusion. I particularly like this one. Diversity is a seat at the table. Inclusion is having a voice. And belonging is having that voice matter. Diversity is kind of the numbers and how we make sure that the room has the right energy and the right diverse lens to have these good conversations. Inclusion are the actions that we take to enable people to bring their authentic self. And belonging is the feeling that we have, right? It's that feeling that our voice matters. And I just love this. For me, I think this is the goal, right? Is to have that place where when you walk in, you know that your voice matters. It's not about agreeing all the time. That's not what we're advocating. It's just the simple knowledge that your voice matters. I also love, by the way, that if you do this, if you kind of make this part of your culture, the acronym there is DIB. So I think it would be kind of a fun thing, like when you want to call out people who are, not in line, you could say, I call dibs. And it takes us back to our sibling rivalry and all of those things. So, all right. So if you're calling dibs and you want to make this part of your culture, when we do this work, a lot of times it's part of the work that we do that is centered around our women's leadership, right? Because the whole struggle to find your voice is something that we women, like, the struggle is real, right? We recognize this resonates with women, absolutely does. Women, if there's one up there that like particularly speaks to you, been there, done that, it's the one that I love the most, by all means, you can put that one in the chat box. But here's what I want to point out to you is that while it's easy to say this is an issue that women identify with, I don't think this is a women's issue. I don't think this path to finding your voice is a women's issue. And to kind of get an amen and a support, I'll call on Adam Galinsky. Most people know Adam Galinsky's work because he does a lot with Sheryl Sandberg. But he has a really interesting talk, and in the talk he asks the question, are a lot of the things that we see that show up in work as gender differences, are they really actually power differences in disguise? It's very interesting stuff because what he's basically saying is that when people are high power, they get to show up in this way, in a really broad pattern. They can show up as this person, they can show up as kind as grandma this day, they can show up as tough as Attila the Hun the next day, and that's okay, that's permitted for them. But low power people have about this much space that they can show up in. If you show up in a way that is outside of this much space, then people won't hear your voice. They will be surprised, and that's where we get into this whole TOO. The word TOO. You're to this, you're to that, and the things that allow us to, or that make us feel like we have to cloak who we are, that we have to adjust and comply with what has been the normal standard. The reason I like this so much is because power is a really interesting thing to study. Power, first, like when we look at gender, it's, for a lot of us, it's a kind of a finite thing, right? We're this or that. Not for everyone. But for a lot of us it is. Power is a much, much easier move. Power very easily goes from this much to this much with some concentration, some intentionality, we can absolutely move power around. So that's a whole nother webinar, right? If you want to talk about power and how we move that around, we'll schedule something else. You can hang out with me later. But I think it's interesting because it switches this from being something that is important to women to something that is important to all people who feel like their voice has been marginalized. And in particular, if we paid attention to that first slide about our friends of color and the pressure that they feel at work, the on guard that they feel at work, I think this is particularly useful for them. Okay, so when we have a whole course around helping people find their voice, and Lisa Zangari and I do it together. It's been a labor of love. We love putting this together. And we have this slide right here represents like 8 hours worth of curriculum. And I don't think any of you all signed on to stick around with me for 8 hours. So I'm not going to give you 8 hours worth of curriculum. But I'm going to hit these 3 points just because for those of you that are trying to be on your own path to how do I create greater sense of belonging for me? How do I create greater sense of belonging for my team? How do we drive this into our culture? We love these 3 things as drivers. We love these 3 things as things, if you want to be intentional about this, things to pay attention to. So I'm going to give just a couple of things, a couple of little examples of kind of why we've chosen these 3 words as being our core, our 3C framework that we're hanging on a lot of different things from. The 3 things are confidence. We'll talk a little bit about that. Connection. I think that one's important too. In particular, I'm going to talk today, I'm going to spend an extra minute on connection because when we do talk about find your voice and we talk about belonging and we talk about authenticity and leaning into to really embracing who you are and not being afraid to share that, I always get a few people in the audience who are like, woohoo, she just gave me license to come into the room and to start firing missiles at everybody, right? That's not exactly what I mean. Yes, I want you to bring your full authentic self to work. But when we talk about connection and finding your voice, we talk about having the ability to say what needs to be said in a way that people will hear you. And so that's a whole nother conversation, right? Is how do we do that in a way that people will hear you? And I think in particular, like I am a big advocate of creating cultures where we bring our authentic self and we can actually fight it out at work. I think that's good, healthy. I think that's how we get to innovation. And I think that's good and healthy in our community too. I think how we argue is the question that we need to ask ourselves. And that's the important thing, is how we have these conversations. Yes, we absolutely want to tell people the truth and we want to get to that. And how we do that is where we need to pay attention when we're driving culture. Okay, so confidence, the thing that we work on a lot is self-awareness. And the only reason I'm going to point this out is because I know self-awareness gets kind of a bad rap. It's warm and fuzzy, right? Oh, we're going to journal entry about how I feel about things, and not everybody loves it. I get it. But I want to take you back to a previous slide where we said, in order to get a culture of belonging, the way to do it in a way where the cost is a worthy cost, we have to focus on authenticity. Let me just tell you that if you don't do the work around self-awareness, if the bus fare to get on the belonging bus is authenticity, you will never have the fare if you don't work on self-awareness. You will never have that. I know, Tiffany, don't hate on journaling. I'm with you. I'm one of your people. I get it. Journaling is a good thing. Yeah, so the reason why this is important in here is because you have to have it. If we say authenticity is what we want as our organizations, then we have to make investments in our people that create greater opportunities for them to add to their self-awareness. There's some other things that we do on the confidence piece that are just helping us prepare when we have these big moments, big find your voice moments. And they're fun things that are just like, did you know that bass music with a lot of good bass, right? You have Black Eyed Peas going or whatever's your jam, actually accelerate your feelings of power. So there's long-term there's long-term confidence, and then there's some short-term things that we do. The next piece is connection. So this is the piece that I think is most important when we talk about the connection to building a business case for belonging. And what are our strategies and what are we doing around connection? So let me ask you a simple question. When are we most likely to speak up? Think about that meeting that you were invited to. When are we most likely to speak up? Pretty easy answer. We're most likely to speak up when we feel like we have friends in the room, right? So a big piece of this is around considering your organization's ability to create allies. One of the studies that I looked at from an organization called Better Up, on their particular index of whether or not people feel like they have a great sense of belonging at work, one ally makes a difference for them. One ally moves the needle on that score. So spending some time thinking about how you do that for your organization and what are the investments that you've made in activating allies. I love this little kind of mnemonic device. In particular, I think white people are starting to be much better at the first three, being an advocate, listening and educating yourself. But that last one is probably the one that we need to work on, is knowing when to yield then and help other people, provide the platform, be the wind beneath other people's wings, and let other people take center stage. And I think that if you want to figure out where do I make this investment, either in your own personal journey or for your organization, ERGs. Employee resource groups, some people call them affinity groups, other people call them business resource groups, business network groups. They all have different names, but it's mostly like some of our larger organizations where they pull together people who have an affinity background. So this is the LGBTQ group, this is the veterans group, this is the African American group. We are doing a lot of work with ERGs. We actually have a new initiative. It's called Inclusion, and it's a council of all these folks that are doing this work with ERGs. And the thing that's amazing to me is that we all talk about how important diversity and inclusion is, and these ERG groups are a fantastic, amazing asset that could fundamentally flip people's sense of belonging. That whole concept that we were talking about, like, I've spent all this time and energy to hire diverse talent, but now they're leaving me. So ERGs are a great asset for that. And I wonder frequently, almost all of the ERGs get almost zero funding. Like, our organizations don't give them any money. And if we want to, feed the beast you want to grow, I would love to see organizations start funding these on a more robust way, because they're a great way to help create belonging for our individuals and for our organizations. All right, the last thing is, actually, I'm gonna pit stop before I go to the last thing. A piece of the Leadership Louisville purpose is about making investments in you, so we're happy to do that through our micro-learning opportunities. But we always are focused on the greater community at large too. And so when we talk about connection, our connection to community is also very important to us. And so here's where everything converges, right? Is that there's a study done by Better World Leadership about a particular thing that has had huge impact on growing people's empathy. Now, there's a lot of studies out there. There's one I was looking at, Harvard did, that looked at our diversity and inclusion programs within our corporate structures, and that by and large, they're not making the impact that we want them to. They're not moving the numbers, they're not moving the feelings. So what can we do that would? This study came up with one thing that did make significant difference, and this is what they found. They found that business people who serve on nonprofit boards are more likely to listen carefully to different views. They're more likely to create inclusive teams. They're more likely to make inclusive hiring decisions. Let me say that again. They're more likely to make inclusive hiring decisions. and they're more likely to make more inclusive promotions. Why? Why is that? Because nonprofit boards tend to be a microcosm of our community. And we tend to be able to kind of create that sense of trust and authenticity because we're all in it for the greater good. It allows our people to show up as the very best version of themselves. And also, especially for people on the rise, it gives you an opportunity to lean in and try to use your voice, right? I'm not at work and it's not quite the same. So I can use serving on a nonprofit board as a learning laboratory for how I develop my own leadership skills, how I find my voice, and how I can be the more authentic version of myself. So I like to share this one, just food for thought for all those of you who are driving culture. If you wanted to make something mandatory that might make a difference in your culture, one thing that you could consider is having all of your people serve on a nonprofit board. And it might surprise you at what a difference it makes in both people's feelings about, whether or not they're proud to work for you and their own pursuit of finding their voice and belonging. Okay, so the last thing I want to leave you with is, my clicker is not working, so I will use the old-fashioned clicker. Come on. No. Try that again. There we go. Last piece of the puzzle that we teach when we do this is courage. Confidence is that feeling, but courage is a choice. Brene Brown, we love her thought leadership. She talks about, courage is a choice that it's not about not being afraid. It's about the choice that something else is more important. And the question that I will leave you all with is kind of, where would you choose to get in the arena? Where can you jump in that would make a difference to you personally on your own path to belonging? What is the one thing that you need to do that would improve your own path, or the path of the people who you manage, or the path of your organization? What is that one thing that you could take away from your experience for the last hour, that if you jumped in and you chose to get in the arena, it would be a juice worth the squeeze kind of endeavor? It would be worth the cost to jump in and to do that. And I'm going to give you one more opportunity. I know some people hate the breakout. You're welcome to bail if you want. But for those of you who, again, want that greater sense of connection, who want some authentic sharing with your fellow leaders, I'm going to give you one more opportunity to do a breakout in just a minute. But before I let you go, I want to let you know what the next things are for the micro-learning courses. Part of our strategy at the Leadership Louisville Center and our strategic plan was, one, we wanted to lean into more technology. I don't think we quite wanted to lean in this far, this fast, but necessity is the mother of invention. So check that box on the strategic plan. We also wanted to increase access to the Leadership Louisville Center. We know a lot of what we do has some tuition costs associated with it, and that creates a barrier. But these micro-learning classes are what we are doing to help make investments in our community and increase access to the Leadership Louisville Center for all kinds of different folks. So by all means, we want to invite you to come back and hang out for the next micro-learning courses. There's the next two coming up in September and October. One of the ways, if you liked this and you like being able to hang out, help us make new friends. So when you get these in your inbox, forward them on. We love social media posts. Thanks to all of you guys. Men, hi, thanks for the shout out on social media last night. We love all of that. It helps us be a better organization for our community. So I want to invite you to do that. Get in touch with Lisa Zangari, our amazing vice president who curates a lot of our leadership development opportunities. I want to give a shout out to Zuri and to Holly and to Shelly and Aaron and everybody else on my Leadership Louisville team. And oh, we have a new employee today who's joining us. Everybody say hi, Tara. Tara's brand new. It's like her second day with Leadership Louisville Center, and she's joining us. So I want to offer them my thanks and my sincere hope that they feel a sense of belonging. It's important to us. And we'll do more on this because we do believe that it's important for you personally, it's important for your organizations, but we also think that for us as a community, we have to master this sense of belonging. We have to expand on it. We have to get much better at it. So we'll continue to work on it at Leadership Louisville Center, and I hope you enjoyed just this little snapshot